For the Sixers, Kyle, how do they unseat this Boston Celtics team that we look at? The odds is so good for them to defeat, or at least to start off the season as defending champions. But for the Sixers, a lot of high hopes, of course, for this team to make a deeper run. Maybe some are satisfied with just a conference appearance. Some, like myself, feel like they need to get to the NBA Finals. So how do they unseat them?
It's an interesting question, and I think it comes down to a couple simple planks, right? Like, I think Joel has to be the best version of Joel that he's never been against Boston on a consistent basis in the playoffs, right? Like, if you go back to the 7-game series they had a couple years ago, Game 5 on the road in Boston, him and Tyrese were awesome. And that is going to be what's required for this team to get past them, because James Harden had a couple monster games in that series.
I actually think his Game 5 was underrated.
Yeah, you always like to talk about that. That's a good floor game for James. But obviously, the Game 1 performance with Joel still out due to injury, James carries them all game and down the stretch.
That game was nuts.
Shout out to Paul Reed as well for the made free throws in the final minute. And then it was Game 4, right, where they had lost the MVP presentation game. The next game, it's hanging in the balance. Joel had some, bad turnovers, bad plays down the stretch, and Harden came through big time yet again. So they don't have James Harden. Like, Paul George might have a big game. He might have multiple big games, but I do think the key to beating that team is Joel's got to beat up Kristaps Porzingis. 100%. Joel has to be able to take it to old man Al Horford. Don't fall for, he's going to keep his hands back. He's not going to go for the rip throughs. You have to be the bigger and better guy. It is that simple. And when you're not, you have to make reads that are quick enough that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and Drew Holiday and these other guys can't just wait and then, surprise double team. I want to see speed from him in that matchup. That has been the key when he's had big games against them in recent seasons. So that's number one. Number two, the other guys just have to shoot well, quite frankly, because Boston doesn't want to play one-on-one defense against Joel for the most part. Very few teams do want to play one-on-one against Joel, but it has been easier to double him and send aggressive help because of the Tobias Harrises of the world, because of even D'Anthony Melton, who was a good shooter when he was here, because he would have a 2-for-9 game, whatever it would be. And so they would be rewarded for that strategy of screw the role players. We're putting everything on Joel and he's got to figure it out. And so it's both sides of that equation. The final piece, obviously, is Tyrese has to be able to consistently generate pressure and leverage against those guys. I think last season we saw him truly turn the corner in this matchup. Historically, Boston has been a nightmare game for him. Not only did we see some good offensive performances last year, that one, actually I think it was at the Chegg, which I'm wearing the sweatshirt today. We saw him put in a great defensive shift against Boston on the road last year in a national TV game. If he holds up on defense and if he can, attack switches with some real gusto, that's a big difference maker and a big key in that matchup.
Yeah, and you brought up Embiid against Porzingis, but Maxi's got to cook Porzingis too. Like, as good as Derek White is defensively, and as many problems as he has given Maxi in prior years, that is a matchup and a deep drop that Maxi can get going against. So he has to have an exceptional series as well if they do meet. And Kyle's exactly right. Like, your role players have to make shots, because Boston will continue to, remember when PJ Tucker came out and scored 11 points in the first quarter of Game 7? And
which people were laughing the night before. Wild. He was in the gym at 2 a.m. or whatever and just getting up shots. So he can take nothing. Yes. And then he came out and lit the Garden on fire.
But even lighting the Garden on fire, Boston is not going to pivot out of their set defense. They're going to continue to abandon you in the corner. So if they're going to abandon, let's say, Kelly, which is a prime person to abandon, he's got to make those shots, or he's got to find driving lanes to make them pay. It's just, that is a team that if you come out and you struggle with your perimeter shot, they will eat you alive. So I think those were the two highlights for sure.
All city like the mayor.